When a fighter becomes a champion in their respective division, the expectation is that at some point they will ultimately lose the title inside the cage. However, over the years, we have seen a number of champions' reigns come to an end outside of a UFC octagon. In truth, many of the sport's biggest names have had their gold confiscated for a variety of different reasons. So, for this video, we'll be taking a look at 10 former champions who were stripped of their titles and the story behind the decisions to do so. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now, without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 10 UFC champions who were stripped of their titles. Number 10. Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson has been one of the top lightweights in the world for roughly a decade and counting. The former Ultimate Fighter 13 winner put together an impressive 12-fight win streak during which he defeated Kevin Lee for the vacant interim UFC lightweight championship. Unfortunately for Ferguson, he would never be given the opportunity to defend or unify the strap. In a fight that had been booked for the 4th time, Ferguson was scheduled to face Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 223, with the winner being granted the undisputed lightweight belt. Of course, this seemingly cursed matchup hit another roadblock when Ferguson tripped over a cable and suffered a torn LCL in his knee. Following the news, Ferguson was pulled from the event and replaced by Al Iaquinta. Since Tony was expected to need at least 6 to 8 months of recovery, Dana White stated that once a winner emerged at UFC 223, Tony would subsequently be stripped of his interim title. So, when the event finally wrapped up, Ferguson's interim title was taken away in what many considered to be a highly controversial move. Number 9. Colby Covington. Colby Chaos Covington is a UFC fighter who is rarely at a loss for words. That said, more often than not, the former NCAA Division I wrestler backs up his trash talk with an outstanding performance inside the cage. At UFC 225, Covington would defeat Rafael dos Anjos to capture the vacant interim UFC welterweight championship. The win set the stage for a title unification bout with his longtime rival Tyron the Chosen One Woodley. Covington was offered a fight with Woodley at UFC 228 back in 2018. However, the self-proclaimed People's Champ was unable to compete due to a recent nasal surgery. As such, in a highly controversial move, the UFC decided to strip Covington of his recently won title. It would ultimately be Darren Till who would step in to face Woodley for the undisputed championship at UFC 228. Fortunately, for those who were hoping to see Woodley vs Covington finally go at it, the two men are now scheduled to collide on September 19th at an upcoming Fight Night event. Number 8. BJ Penn. UFC Hall of Famer BJ the Prodigy Penn is a former 2-division champ, who is widely regarded as one of the greatest competitors in MMA history. A fight that would go down as perhaps the biggest win of his career took place at UFC 46 in 2004. The event featured the Prodigy taking on Matt Hughes for the welterweight strap. At the time, Hughes looked unstoppable, having just recently set the record for welterweight title defenses with 5 to his credit. Conversely, Penn was a natural lightweight who was making his welterweight debut. Despite being a massive betting underdog, in what was a career-defining performance, Penn managed to submit Hughes with a rear naked choke in the very first round. Sadly, UFC fans would never get to see Penn's welterweight title reign play out. The Hawaiian would decide to compete for rival promotion K1, citing a lack of competition in the UFC as his reason at the time. In response, Dana White and company claimed Penn had breached his contract and was subsequently stripped of his title. Number 7. Germaine de Randamie. Kickboxing specialist Germaine de Randamie has had an impressive run inside the UFC, with her biggest win in the promotion coming back in 2017 at UFC 208, as she defeated Holly Holm to become the inaugural UFC Women's Featherweight Champion. Of course, the title win wasn't without its controversy, as de Randamie would land a pair of hard shots after the buzzer in both the second and third rounds, without suffering any points deductions. Moreover, even though the Iron Lady was awarded a unanimous decision victory, 14 out of 23 media outlets would have Holm winning the bout. As it turned out, the end of the Dutch kickboxer's title reign would be almost as controversial as the beginning, when in May of 2017, de Randamie took to social media stating that she intended to go back down to the bantamweight division. Her decision was in part based on the fact that she rejected a fight with featherweight contender Chris Cyborg due to the Brazilian's past transgressions with performance-enhancing drugs. Unimpressed with her reasoning, the UFC stripped de Randamie of her featherweight crown. Number 6. Nicco Montanyo. The Ultimate Fighter 26 marked the introduction of the UFC Women's Flyweight Championship. That season, the winner of the tournament would become the newly founded division's inaugural title holder. The 16-woman tournament featured several established names outside of the UFC. However, in the end, it was a relatively unknown fighter from Arizona named Nicco Montanyo who would come out on top. Despite entering the contest as the 14th seed, Montanyo defeated every opponent put in front of her on her way to capturing the gold. Following her title win, Montanyo's Cinderella story would come to an unspectacular end. After being hospitalized following weight-cutting issues, just prior to a scheduled bout with Valentina Shevchenko, the UFC decided to confiscate her title. The unlikely champion was later suspended for Penn use, and has fought just once since winning her title in December of 2017. Number 5. Jon Jones. Jon Jones may well be considered the greatest mixed martial artist to ever set foot inside the UFC cage. Coincidentally, he's also happened to be one of the most controversial athletes the sport has ever seen. At times, Jones' mishaps outside of the cage have come close to overshadowing his remarkable athletic achievements. After defeating his rival Daniel Cormier at UFC 182, Jones' next opponent was set to be Anthony Rumble Johnson, with the two men set to meet for the UFC light heavyweight title at UFC 187. However, the match was derailed when reports surfaced that Jones had been involved in a hit-and-run accident involving a pregnant woman. Following the collision, the youngest ever UFC champ was ultimately stripped of his title and would eventually plead guilty to leaving the scene of an accident. A brief comeback saw Jones win the interim light heavyweight title at UFC 197, only to be stripped of it months later after failing a drugs test. Jones would eventually return to defeat Daniel Cormier at UFC 214 and, in turn, reclaim the light heavyweight strap. Unfortunately, the second title reign would be very short-lived, when following the fight, Jones would test positive for performance-enhancing drugs. As such, the result of the fight was changed to a no contest, and the title was returned to Cormier. After a second lengthy suspension, Jones managed to once again reclaim the then vacant UFC Light Heavyweight Championship by defeating Alexander Gustafsson at UFC 232. Of course, the polarizing star recently announced that he would be vacating the title to try his hand in the heavyweight division. In essence, Jones has had 3 championship reigns end without ever losing a fight. Number 4. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is one of the most recognised athletes in the world and has helped the sport of MMA gain considerable mainstream notoriety. Of course, besides being incredibly famous, the Irishman has also proven to be a fantastic fighter. In terms of competitive accolades, the Dublin native is perhaps best known for being the first UFC athlete to hold titles simultaneously. While McGregor may have won both the UFC featherweight and lightweight championships, he never attempted to defend either title. Following his win at UFC 194, McGregor decided to set his sights on the larger weight classes. Because of this, his featherweight title went undefended for a whopping 350 days. So, after capturing the lightweight strap at UFC 205, the UFC decided the time had come to strip him of his featherweight title. Then, following an 18-month stint away from MMA, the promotion also decided to remove the lightweight championship from McGregor's waist. At present, Conor McGregor is the only multi-division champion in UFC history to never attempt to defend his title. Number 3. Josh Barnett. Longtime heavyweight veteran Josh the Warmaster Barnett has been competing professionally since 1997. Over the years, he has fought for several promotions, including Pride, Strikeforce, Affliction and the UFC. Barnett's first stint with the UFC took place in the early 2000s. During that stretch, he even shared a cup of coffee with the promotion's heavyweight title. Barnett captured the championship at UFC 36, in a bout with Randy the Natural Couture, a contest that Barnett won via a second-round TKO. Unfortunately, following the match, Barnett tested positive for steroids during a mandatory post-fight drug test, which would ultimately mark the end of a brief title reign. After getting stripped of the title, Barnett temporarily left the UFC and spent 6 years fighting in Japan. Number 2. Frank Mir. Frank Mir is one of the most dangerous grapplers the UFC heavyweight division has ever seen. He's submitted several legends of the game, including Antonio Nogueira, Tank Abbott, and Brock Lesnar. He is a 2-time heavyweight champion who has held both the undisputed and interim versions of the title. But due to an unfortunate occurrence, Mir's initial title reign as undisputed champ came to an abrupt and tragic ending. After defeating Tim Sylvia for the vacant title at UFC 48 back in 2004, Mir was involved in a severe motorcycle motorcycle accident. The Vegas native was unfortunately struck by a car while riding his motorcycle, and while Mir thankfully survived the collision, he tore all of the ligaments inside his knee, as well as suffering a broken femur. Mir was unable to return to face reigning interim champ Andrei Arlovski for their scheduled fight in October of 2005, which meant Arlovski was promoted to the undisputed champion. Mir would eventually make a full recovery and go on to become the interim heavyweight champ in 2011. Number 1. Sean SHERK. Sean the Muscle Shark SHERK was one of the best lightweights of his era, despite the fact that he receives little fanfare these days. The now retired Muscle Shark is a former UFC lightweight champion whose resume includes victories over stars like Kenny Florian and Nick Diaz. Following his successful defense against Hermes Franca at UFC 73, SHERK would have a bit of an issue with his post-fight drugs test. Following the contest, Sean SHERK tested positive for anabolic steroids, and as one may expect, following the result, he was stripped of his title. After a 6-month suspension, he would get his chance to reclaim his title in a UFC 84 showdown with BJ Penn. However, it was Penn who turned out to be the better fighter after SHERK failed to answer the bell for the 4th round. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching guys, and we'll see you on the next video.